Hello, my name is Fox and you're watching Den of Fools. Let's jump right in. Today we are looking at the balance changes released by GW. We have had a load of changes in the data slate, as well as points increases and decreases for the majority of factions. We will cover each faction in turn and give our thoughts on the update and how it will affect the win rates going forward. With that said, let's start with the Aeldari before going down the win rates from top to bottom. As everyone knows, the Aeldari have been at the top of the meta since the start of 10th edition. Even after successive nerfs, they've remained at the top, so GW has made another round of changes to try and bring them into line. We have provided the points changes for the units, which are actually quite limited for the Aeldari this time around. They've increased the points for the Night Spinner, which isn't surprising, as they've increased the points for all indirect fire units. They have also increased the points for the Wraith Guard, with both of the units going up by over 10%. GW has not held back with the nerf, and they didn't stop with the points. GW has really tried to make an impact with the rules of the faction, with a host of changes in the data slate. First of all, they have halved the number of fate dice available to Aeldari players at the start of the game, from 12 to only 6. This will have a big impact, as on average you will only roll 1 6 at the start of the game. A few units which generate fate dice, such as Eldrad Ulthan, have been changed to represent the lower total, although they still give the same benefit. I would be surprised if we don't see units like Eldrad and Guardians taken more often now, as fate dice are a much more precious commodity. As mentioned, they have decided to further nerf the Night Spinner by changing its special rule. It now removes 2 inches from an enemy unit's movement and charge roll, rather than removing 2 from the move and preventing them from advancing. Depending on the matchup, this rule will be slightly better or significantly worse. Stopping slow armies from advancing was very useful, so it is less effective against them. However, it is actually better against melee armies, as previously it didn't affect the charge roll. With the sizable points increase, I would imagine we will see less Night Spinners being taken. We have seen 3 in most recent Aeldari lists. The Wraith Guard have also had a rules change, meaning you can only target the units which shot at them with their War Construct ability, which allows them to return fire as if it's your shooting phase. This is a big nerf for the unit, as before they were a massive threat to any enemies within range. I do think the change is warranted. We did see the Hexmark Destroyer have a similar change, when it could just shoot at any unit in range, when a friendly one was attacked nearby. As an indirect nerf, the Fate's Messenger enhancement now only gives automatic 6s to the bearer, and not the units they are leading. Every time Wraith Guard have been played in the top Aeldari list we have covered, there has been a Spirit Save with this enhancement. It allows you to use the 6 to get devastating wounds on a D-cannon on your turn, or auto-pass a save on your opponents. The enhancement is still useful on some HQs. We have seen it regularly on a Death Jester, which will still be a powerful combo. It does greatly reduce the overall strength of the Wraith Guard. I would be surprised if they are still taken in top Aeldari lists after this nerf. The Yinkan has been hit quite hard, with its teleporting ability being heavily nerfed. Previously, you could teleport to where a unit was destroyed once per phase, which made it very difficult to deal with. Now it can only teleport once per turn, and only on your turn. This is a massive nerf, but in my opinion the rule did need tweaking. No other unit in the game had such a powerful maneuverability, and now Aeldari players will have to decide if they want the Yinkan to stay in its position until their next turn when they move it. It still hits very hard, and the ability is still very useful, but is no longer pretty much auto-include as it was before. Speaking of maneuverability, the final changes to Phantasm. Previously it allowed you to move up to 7 inches after shooting, which meant many of your infantry units could simply move to safety after attacking. Now you can only move d6 inches after shooting, which is a very significant nerf. It will make the army overall less maneuverable and a lot harder to hide again after a shooting. Overall, GW has gone in quite hard with the rule changes, with some very significant nerfs. The biggest is the number of fate dice you generate, which will have a massive impact on the army going forward. There is now a pretty decent chance you won't roll a single 6, where before you would usually have 2 or 3 even on a bad roll. They do still have a lot of strong options, with tournament staples such as Warp Spiders and Swooping Hordes remaining unchanged. They certainly won't like the change to Phantasm, which made them very difficult to keep up with, but I still think they will see a lot of play. In the hands of a skilled player, Aeldari will still perform well in my opinion, but they do need a lot more finesse to play well. Their win rate will decrease significantly, however, I don't think they will be anywhere near the bottom of the pile. GW have not made huge changes to the Votann, with 3 units getting a points increase. The increase for the Thunderkin and Sagittar are quite large, with 13.3% and 50% respectively. We then have a much smaller 6.7% increase for the Half Guard. These units will most definitely still see play, as the Votann range is rather small. Because these units are staples of the army, they will see a decrease in their win rate. However, I don't think it will be by a huge margin. Strong options such as the Pioneers and Land Fortress remain unchanged, so I would expect their win rate to only decrease by a few percentage points. I suppose one positive is it will be slightly less expensive per point to collect a Votann army. Maybe when they get their codex, GW will give them rules befitting for an elite faction and adjust their points accordingly. Chaos Space Marines have had a fair few points increases, as well as some rule changes. First of all, some of the most popular characters and units have been nerfed. In many CSM lists, we have seen Dark Communes leading a Cursed Cultist and Chaos Lords leading Chosen. Both of these combinations are significantly less efficient, with a large points hike for all of them. The Chosen and Dark Communes get an 18.2% increase, with the Chaos Lord getting a massive 26.7% increase. The Cultists may have a slightly lower points increase, but they've been hit with further nerfs by some rule changes. Their OC has been reduced to 1, and they now only regenerate models in your own command phase. They were very strong before, with many of the top Chaos lists we have seen taking 3 full squad of a Cursed Cultist led by Dark Communes. It was a little strange that a load of twisted mutations hurled objectives, as well as your classic Heretic Astartes, so I can't say I'm too surprised they have decreased it. These very popular units getting a big nerf will certainly heavily impact Chaos Space Marine's win rate going forward. GW have not stopped there, with increases for the Forge Fiend, Obliterators and Warp Talons. The Forge Fiend has taken a significant hit, with an 11.1% increase. It was one of the first firepower choices, with the Ectoplasma Cannons pumping out some versatile shooting. The Obliterators have increased by a relatively small amount, with the Warp Talons being hit significantly harder with a 10% increase. With the Warp Talons in particular, they did see a massive 23% points cut in the balance update before this one, so it is not too surprising they've gone up a bit. GW did see fit to buff one unit, with the Lord of Skulls getting a 6.3% decrease. To be honest, I think this buff will make very little difference. The Lord of Skulls were not too great before the change. GW also nerfed the Iron Siege enhancement with a 33% points increase. I would imagine it will still be taken at the higher cost for the CP generation if you pass a Dark Pact leadership test each turn. They have changed the detachment rule, meaning units have to have the same mark as the transports they are getting into, and they have nerfed some of the stratagems. The Nurgle Dark Obfuscation stratagem made your unit untargetable by range attacks out to 18 inches rather than the previous 12. It was a strong option, and it is still good at 18 inches, but it is a significant nerf. Profane Zeal also got hit hard. It now only applies to Chaos Undivided in general, and rather than giving reroll hits and wounds of 1, which go to full rerolls for Chaos Undivided, it simply gives you full wound rerolls. It is still a good stratagem, but nowhere near as powerful as it was before. With some big points increases, and some key stratagems nerfed, I think Chaos Space Marines will see a rather big decrease in their win rate. It'll be interesting to see if Chaos Space Marine players find other strong combos, as a Cursed Cultist and Chosen were very popular with competitive players before. They weren't mentioned in the win rates, but we have them on 52% on our most recent stats. GW have still seen fit to give them some pretty hefty nerfs, with Khan and the Master of Executions getting a big 25% increase. Both types of 8-bound have also had a significant points increase, which will hurt as they were the backbone of most World Eaters armies. The Lords of Skulls gets the same buff as the Chaos Space Marine, with a decrease for the Forge Fiend. It is now significantly cheaper than CSMs, which I'm sure will be quite nice as it's their main source of ranged firepower. GW has also made some nerfs, some key enhancements, starting with the Berserker Glaive. This was a very popular choice on the Master of Executions. It used to give you +1 to attacks and damage while giving you D3 until the end of the turn when you make a charge move. This could allow the Master of Executions to dish out some major melee damage, but now you no longer get the D3 on the charge. This is a pretty big nerf, especially combined with the points increase for the Master of Executions themselves. GW didn't stop there with a nerf to the favour of Khorne enhancement. Previously, once per battle, you could discard your favourite of Khorne dice and re-roll them. It didn't count as a re-roll, so any abilities can still be used. Now you can only use this once per battle, which is another big nerf. The World Eater's Demon Prince also got a slight nerf. Their aura now gives a 5+ symbol rather than a 4. If you already have a 5+ symbol, it does go to 4, but it's definitely weaker now. Overall, some of the strongest combos have been hit alongside the 8-bound. Seeing as the World Eaters have such a limited range of units to choose from, I would imagine it will lead to a sharp decrease in their win rate. The first faction to see a proper buff is Chaos Knights. Pretty much everything got a decent points cut here, apart from the War Dog Brigand, which got a small increase. The Executioner gets a small buff, and the rest of the War Dogs were unchanged alongside the Rampager. Its points cuts galore for the rest of the night, with everything else seeing at least a 5% decrease. The Forge World War Dog Moirax goes down with the Knight Abominant getting the biggest decrease with 12.1%. They were already doing well, however they were relying on the War Dogs to be competitive. With them largely remaining the same, and everything else dropping, it can only help their win rate. Things are looking pretty green for the Orks with a host of points cuts. Most of the buff units have over a 10% decrease, with the killer cans getting the biggest buff at 16.7%. All the buggies get a decrease, and both the hunter and kill rig get a buff. There has been a few nerfs, with the Squighog boys getting a pretty sizable increase with 13.6%. Knobs also see a small increase as well as the standard truck. The Squighog boys and knobs were very popular units competitively, with both units seeing a lot of play. The Squighog boys in particular were taken in big numbers, so I'd imagine we'll see a fair few less of them now. Having said that, overall, with all the buffs, their win rate should improve. The Adepta Sororitas see buffs overall, with some big nerfs to some strong units. The Arco-Flagellants get a sizable increase, with a 15% rise if you were taking all 10. They were taken very often, so it will hurt the faction, although they have buffed other melee units like Repentia and Zephyrim, which will make them more viable. They have nerfed Foul by 20 points, but considering she is always taken with 3 Paragon Warsuits, and they have gone down to 30 points, she will still see play in most competitive lists. Talking about popular units, the Triumph of St. Catherine has been nerfed. Previously, one of its auras allowed Friendly Sisters units to perform unlimited acts of faith rather than 1. It has been significantly toned down, so now it will only allow a unit to do 2. It was a very strong aura, which led to the Triumph being taken in most competitive Sisters lists. I think it will still see play, as it did escape a points change and still have some powerful abilities. Finally, Retributors and Dominions have got around an 8% buff, while the Exorcist suffers from a nerf as its indirect fire. Overall, Sisters are looking stronger, and the Arco-Flagellants are not the clear melee choice anymore, which isn't a bad thing in my opinion. We have some minor changes for the Death Guard, which are buffs overall. The Death Shrouds get a small decrease, with the Bloat Drone going down 10%. The Lord of Villarance and Titus get the biggest decrease with 20%. The Plague Marines get a sizable points increase, which will affect them as they were the backbone of many lists. The Plague Burst Crawler also gets a hike, as all indirect fire units. There is also a nerf to the Biologist's grenade ability. Previously you could target the Biologist with the grenade stratagem for 0 CP once per battle. Now they have slightly restricted it, so only one Biologist can throw a grenade each turn. Each model can use the stratagem for free, so you will be able to use it 3 times if you take 3 of them, just not in the same turn. Overall, while they won't like the Plague Marine nerf, I think overall they have been slightly buffed. The changes are rather minor, so I don't think it will make a huge difference to their win rate. The Tau only sees some minor changes, with the commanders other than the Coalstar getting a 10-point decrease. The Crisis suits see the only nerf, with the Riptide getting a buff. I think most Tau lists will be taking at least 1 Riptide. At least 3 Riptides can't be protected by hordes of shield drones like they could in previous editions. The Vespids also get a large percentage decrease for a small balance pass for the Tau. I'm sure the win rate will increase, but as we know, their codex is not very far away now. We have a mixture of increases and decreases for the Space Marines. It looks like GW were trying to internally balance the codex in my opinion. I think Space Marines will fare slightly worse overall, with many of their most competitive units being nerfed. Aggressors were seen in nearly all Space Marine lists we have featured in our tournament spotlights. They did usually have Calgar and the Puckatheri Biologist in tow, plus the Fire Discipline Enhancement, to make a very scary unit. The characters are unchanged, so I think we will still see the aggressors played, even if you have to pay more for them. Likewise, Inceptors were seen in nearly every list, and they get a big 18.2% increase. I would imagine we'll see a lot less of them played now. The Redemptor was not seen anywhere near as much, but it has caught a slight nerf. The Scouts were very popular, and they have got a large points increase. They are still some of the cheapest Space Marine bodies in the Codex, so I'm sure they will still see play, even if you have to pay more for them. Finally, for the nerfs, the Whirlwind gets the biggest increase due to its indirect fire. Most of the buffs are small points decreases, with the Outriders getting another large drop. They have always struggled as a unit, perhaps with yet another points drop, they will see some play. Considering the nerfs outweigh the buffs, I would imagine the Space Marines will find it a bit more difficult. As we know, they have a huge number of data sheets to choose from, and I'm sure players will continue to find lists that can win tournaments. There are some minor changes to the chapters with their own indexes, apart from the Dark Angels, who have had a load of points cuts. GW did state in the MetaWatch article that Dark Angels points will change again when the Codex fully releases. Therefore, there is no point dwelling on them. However, I do think it is a little strange that Deathwing Command Squad got a points cut when it's supposedly not in the new Codex. The Black Templars may have not had their win rate declared, but they have got a nerf to their Crusader squads alongside Grimaldus and Helbrecht. Both the characters have a massive 26.3% increase, but they were very efficient before. The Crusaders were the cheapest way to get Space Marine bodies on the board. Our win rate for the Templars is 53%, and they will definitely come down now some of their key units have been nerfed. The Space Wolves and Blood Angels have received a minor change to their unique detachments. The Space Wolves sagas are now easy to score. Instead of triggering at the end of the battle round, it triggers at the end of each player's turn. It is an improvement, but personally, I still think the detachment isn't great. Space Wolf players have been enjoying the Stormlight Task Force, and I am sure that will continue. For my Blood Angels, there are no point cuts for my Sanguinary Guard as I wanted, but their unique detachment did get improved. They now get +2 strength on the charge, alongside their extra attack. Strength 10 power fists on the charge sound pretty good to me. These are the only changes to the Divergent chapters. I think the Black Templars will have competition from the rest for the best performing chapter, and the detachment buffs for Blood Angels and Space Wolves will make them tempting at least. The Genestealers for the Genestealers get a buff, presumably to match the one they got in the Tyranids Codex. I don't think it will have a massive impact on their win rate, but at least it's a good reason to pick up some of those awesome new sculpts. We get into the first of the factions that were really struggling, the Adeptus Custodes. After their nerf in the last data slate, they dropped to the bottom of the pile, with us having them on 44%. GW have seen fit to give them significant buffs, with the most of the on-foot custodians getting a decent buff. The bikes also got a small decrease, with the shield captain going down a massive 22.2%. That is not all, GW have adapted their detachment rule, so their 4+ save to mortals also applies to devastating wounds. This will be a big durability boost for the Custodes. They are now the only faction who has any kind of defense against devastating wounds. I think the buffs will push them into the midfield, but I'm not too sure they will be competing for the very top spot. There are some minor changes for the Grey Knights, with the Brotherhood Librarian getting a 10% increase. They have slightly buffed the profile in the Nemesis Dread Knight's weapons, which I think will be appreciated by most Grey Knight players. Overall, it will definitely help them a bit, although not by too much. I do think we'll be seeing more Dread Knights on the table. We see some major changes for demons, with nearly all the lesser demons getting significant points decreases. Most of the bigger demons also get cuts. All of the points changes are on screen. There is also a key change to their Dark Pact army rule. This is the one which allows other Chaos factions to take demon allies. When doing so, you must have a battle line unit for every non-battle line unit you want to ally in. This will make allies far less appealing, however, at least the lesser demons are cheaper on the whole. To me, it looks like GW have attempted to internally balance the codex, while also buffing the faction. Personally, I think this is a good thing, as most of the most competitive demons list consisted of only greater demons. It is hard to say how big an impact such sweeping changes will have, but it will certainly significantly improve their win rate. Like their Chaos counterparts, Imperial Knights have received a whole load of points cuts for the entire army. Every single unit went down, other than the Gallant, Atropos and Armiger Warglaive. GW have also buffed the Laylo the Tyrant part of the Code Chivalric rule. It now gives you a single hit reroll and a single wound reroll each time you shoot or fight. Previously it was a single hit and wound reroll of 1, so this is quite a nice buff. Overall, their win rate should improve significantly. They have been struggling since their previous nerf, so this should help them out a fair bit. It will certainly make the big knights more popular, and we might see an end to the majority of knight lists spamming as many armigers as possible. GW has overall buffed Tyranids, with some targeted nerfs on the Death Leaper and Neurolictor in particular. These units are very popular indeed, due to them having lone operative and infiltrators to make them supremely useful for objectives. The Death Leaper was seen in every top competitive Tyranid list we have covered in our tournament spotlight, and the Neurolictor has been in the majority. It is not surprising they've got a points increase, however, I still think they will be taken at the higher costs. The Gargoyles got a slight nerf, with Pyrovores getting a rather large increase. Both types of Norn are being buffed, alongside some big bugs, like the Screamer Killer and Tyrannifex. The Genestealers go down as we have mentioned, with the Broodlord also decreasing. This combination of units will certainly be far more tempting now. Overall, I think the changes will help the Tyranids, however, they haven't been buffed as much as the other struggling factions around them. Due to this, I think they will still be towards the bottom end of the win rates. The Guard have had their Manticore nerfed to this indirect fire, with one key rule change for the officers. Now they are able to give orders when they get out of a transport or come from strategic reserves, which I personally think is a very nice change. It certainly helps Scions greatly, and I think they will finally see some play. Although I like the rule change, I don't think it will have a significant impact on their win rate. They again might suffer from the other armies around them getting buffed by a larger degree. Speaking of buffed armies, we finally get to the worst performing faction, the Drukhari. GW have done a first, giving them a brand new detachment to use, making them the only index faction with 2. I personally like that GW have done this. They certainly needed help, and they were lacking some of their 9th edition flexibility. I think it does mean that the Drukhari Codex isn't coming anytime soon, but I think it is good GW has given players another option while they wait. That's not all, they have also changed their main army rule. Previously, when you were empowered through pain in the shooting hill fight phase, you got reroll hits. Now in addition, you also get AP-1 in melee. This is a very nice buff for the melee portion of the army, and they have allowed the Archon to lead Incubi. When you're empowered in the fight phase and charge in with a squad of Incubi led by an Archon, you will now get full hit and wound rerolls alongside an extra AP-1, a very nice buff indeed. With all the new rules, it is hard to estimate quite how strong they will be, but with a range of points cut, their win rate will surely improve significantly. We saw with the Votann how they went from the worst performing faction to one of the best after the last data slate. They have not received quite as many points cut, but the new rules will make a big impact, and I estimate they will be a strong mid-table faction if not better. We have covered a huge number of changes, however, there are a few factions which have not had any changes at all. Firstly, Necron players are going to really like this balance update. They are already at the top of the meta, even by GW's win rate, and have had no changes. With the factions around them getting nerfed, I would be very surprised if they don't remain right at the top of the win rate. Another potential winner are the Thousand Sons, who are doing alright, but have not been changed. I'm sure Thousand Sons players would have preferred a buff, but with the other factions above them getting nerfed, overall I think they may well be competing near the top. The most unfortunate faction for this balance update has to be the Adeptus Mechanicus. They are really struggling at the moment, with a win rate below the Goldilocks zone. In the most competitive environments such as the LVO, their win rate drops as low as 35%. With them already struggling, and the other factions at the bottom getting buffed, I think they will unfortunately be the worst performing faction once the balance update sees play. I really do hope GW are not going to leave it another 3 months before giving them the buff they need. GW did state that the Dark Angels are going to get further points updates when the Codex comes out. Hopefully they will decide to make some points adjustments for the Necrons and Admech at that time. In any event, I'm very excited to see how the new meta evolves when we get the first win rates with the new balance update. If you enjoyed our content, please subscribe, check out one of the videos on screen, and consider using our affiliate links in the description. Thank you for watching.